Hi, I'd like to spend a few minutes now talking about the accounting for financial instruments using the amortised cost method under AASB 7 and 9. This is permissible for financial instruments which are principal and interest instruments, and where amortised cost is considered appropriate given the business model of the firm. Probably the best way of thinking about how this operates is to have a simple example. And here we have a company, Pure Cosmetics, which is seeking to raise cash in order to expand its business. It does this by issuing bonds. The bonds have a face value of $5 million, a coupon of 8% per annum paid annually in arrears, and they have a term of 3 years. At the time of the issue, the interest rate for bonds of a similar risk is 10%, and that is the price at which the bonds are issued or sold. In terms of the accounting for this, the initial recognition requires that we work out the amount that we're going to receive for the sale of the bonds, and this is going to be equal to the present value of the future cash flows discounted at the selling price or the selling yield. This is perhaps best demonstrated with a simple table whereby we put down the coupon payments, the principal component, and that gives us our total cash flows, and we discount these total cash flows at the yield at which the bond was sold, which is 10%, and that tells us that the net present value of the future cash flows is $4.751 million, and that is the proceeds that we received. So in terms of the first journal entry, you can see that we recognise a liability for the present value of the future cash flows, the $4.751 million, and we recognise the fact that we've received cash of $4,751. That's our transaction price. In terms of the subsequent accounting, under the amortised cost method, what you effectively do is you recognise the interest on the obligation calculated at a constant price or a constant rate of 10%, which is the sale yield. The best way of working out the annual journal entries here is to do a little table like this, where you show the opening balance, the payment, the interest calculated at that 10% rate, and you can see that the interest is on 4.7 million is 470,000, and the difference between the payment and the interest gives you the amount of interest which is either paid or capitalized. So what you can see here is that we're capitalizing $75,131 worth of interest, and that gives us a closing balance of 4.8 million. And we do that for each of the 3 years, and you can see that in the bottom right hand corner of the table, that gives us the face value of the security. The important thing about this table is that it gives us the numbers which go into the journal entries for each of the 3 years for the bond. And we can see what those journal entries are like on the next slide. In the first year, you can see that we have the interest expense of $475,131 recognised, and that comprises $400,000 worth of cash payment, coupon payment, and it includes a capitalised interest amount effectively of $75,131. That comes from row 1 of the table. The numbers for the second year come from row 2 on the table, and you can see we have a payment of $400,000, capitalised interest of $82,000, and total interest expense of $482,000. And finally we have in year 3 the third row of the table. And you can see that in each case it's just the same amounts being shown for the payment, but slightly varied amounts for the amount of interest capitalised and interest expense, but the numbers are broadly consistent. Finally, at the end, the maturity of the bond, we have the bond being repaid at face value, which is $5 million. So accounting for bonds using the amortised cost method is pretty straightforward, and it gives us a pretty consistent interest expense from year to year. It's only increasing because of the slightly increasing amount of the liability. Thank you.